All right. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first Hispanic Heritage Month celebration webinar, Expanding Access to Hispanic Homeownership. My name is René Vargas Martinez, and I am the director of the Juntos Avanzamos Network, and it is really a privilege to have you here with us. Now, before we start this webinar, I wanted to go over the ground rules. First of all, we really want you to participate in the webinar, so please feel free to write at any moment through the chat box or through the Q&A. Also, this webinar will be recorded for future use. So please feel free after you receive the recording to share it with your staff and with everybody you know so that everyone can benefit from our discussions here. Having said that, we'll go ahead and pass it over to Inclusiv's Executive Vice President of the Inclusiv Network, Pablo De Filippi. Muy buenas tardes, Pablo.
Muchas gracias, René. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. This is such an amazing way to start Hispanic Heritage Month. We do it every year. I wish that it was Hispanic Heritage Year, not just a month, but we'll get there at some point. So a quick update on the Inclusiv Network. As many of you know, we have been growing significantly over the last couple of years. We're approaching now around 500 members, serving 18 million consumers. Many of our members are, of course, CDFI certified. We have a huge contingent of members in Puerto Rico. This has been a development, or kind of recent development. You know, this is something we started in 2018 in Puerto Rico. So we're really proud to have such a big response there. Regional wise, we are spread out throughout the country pretty evenly. We have members in 47 states at this point. Actually 48 states. So we're really happy about that representation and participation at the national level. So I'm gonna invite my colleague Monica to talk about this incredible development and what it means to us. Monica, if you can please join us.
Thank you, Pablo. So I'm really excited to announce that Inclusiv has been awarded one of City Foundation's grants through their Community Finance Innovation Fund. This is a brand new announcement, hot off the presses this week. We're so excited. And what this means is that we're going to be able to have a new project launching in 2023 dedicated to MDIs, minority depository institutions, and cooperativas. We will be working with these organizations over 100 MDIs and cooperativas over the next 2 years. And this program that we'll have will include some peer networking in a cohort format, as well as classes and training and linkages to consultants, as well as some grant funding. So we're so excited to announce, we're so honored to be one of these recipients. So, you know, we look forward to doing this work deeper in Puerto Rico and in other communities across the country in the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. I forgot to point out that a significant part of the Inclusiv Network is, of course, minority depository credit unions, MDIs. So this is a huge opportunity for us to expand the work that we do with our members and also bring more MDIs that may have or may need that support. Quickly, an advocacy update. A lot of things have been happening. You know, everyone is aware of the Inflation Reduction Act. There's, you know, some significant resources included in the legislation that we are working to deploy through credit unions. There's also an overlap with some past legislation, you know, the infrastructure bill, for instance, where there could be opportunities for credit unions to participate and expand the work that we already do around clean energy, energy efficiency, specifically in the context of low-income and minority communities. So there's a lot of things happening on that front that hopefully will be important for you as you think about ways that we can increase our impact in communities. Now, I guess this is you, Rene. Let's provide an update on where we are with Juntos
Sure.
Avanzamos.
So quick updates with Juntos Avanzamos. As many of you, those who might not know, Juntos Avanzamos is a network and a designation for credit unions that are committed to serving and empowering Hispanic communities. As of today, the network has 128 credit unions serving 9.8 million consumers, operating in 28 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. If you're interested in learning more about Juntos Avanzamos, please feel free to contact me directly. I will put my contact information in the chat. Now, in quick updates, we are really proud to announce that recently we entered new partnerships with Experian and with MemberClose. These partnerships will allow us to expand the tool and resources available for Juntos Avanzamos and Inclusiv member credit unions. Stay tuned for more details on these partnerships. Of course, this webinar and all of the activities that have been scheduled for this month are part of Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you so much for joining us. And now we'll talk about some of the activities that we will have throughout the month. First of all, and maybe Paulo can talk about this, we're celebrating in conjunction with the National Credit Union Foundation a DE workshop in El Paso. Paulo, could you elaborate a bit about the workshop?
Yes. So the Development Educator Workshop is something that the foundation, the National Credit Union Foundation, has been doing for quite some time. This year is going to be in El Paso, the week of October 11th to the 14th. And the idea is to provide an immersion experience into serving the Hispanic community. Of course, everyone knows that El Paso has a huge concentration of Latinos. It's one of the places in the US where the Hispanic community is larger than any other community. So it's going to be a really interesting, in-depth type of experience with learning, networking, but also a little bit of fun. So hopefully some of you can join us there. There's still time to register and join us in El Paso. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Thank you, Pablo, for that clarification. And of course, as part of Hispanic Heritage Month, we will be publishing our Hispanic Heritage Month Juntos Avanzamos magazine. This will be the first magazine that will be published in Spanish and also in English. Throughout the month, we'll start to publish the stories that are part of the Juntos magazine. They include CEO profiles, league profiles, success stories, partnership stories, technical and data stories. So we really look forward to sharing the success stories with you. So please stay tuned. If you yourself have a success story that you want us to include in the next issue of our Juntos magazine, please feel free to write directly to me and we will make sure to give you coverage. And of course, we have another webinar coming up on October 12th at 1 p.m. It is a webinar in conjunction with our industry partners, Experian and Coopera. And this particular webinar will be a bit different from what our webinars are. It will be focused on data, the power of data, and product analytics to be able to reach deeper into the community and to develop more relevant products and services. So we're really excited about this. We will send the formal invitation in the next couple of days. The registration link is already opened. We sent it today in our Hispanic Heritage Month rundown. So please register for this webinar. It's going to be a blast. And of course, we have several credit unions that are celebrating their Juntos Avanzamos proclamation ceremonies as part of Hispanic Heritage Month. We have United Credit Union in Chicago, Illinois on September 29th, Suncoast on October 11th, Rise Credit Union in El Paso on October 14th, and you can actually go to the DE program and then go to the proclamation ceremony. It's going to be a great finish to that activity. And then Allegiance Credit Union on October 15th in Oklahoma. Congratulations to all these Juntos Avanzamos credit unions on their proclamations. And with that, I will pass it over again to Pablo de Felipe for the reason that we're all here, our homeownership webinar. Pablo.
Thank you, Rene. So we, we always talk about ways that we can eliminate some of the barriers that keep Latinos and immigrants from building assets here in the U.S. And of course, home ownership is, the single most important way for anyone actually to build wealth. And we are going to be examining today not only the barriers, but also the solutions that exist that we have been able to bring about through Inclusiv, our partners, pivot lending, and also, of course, before and the work that our members do, such as Onpath in New Orleans, Louisiana. But before we jump into the solutions, we felt that it was important to have Sam Kenny from Unidos US, one of our big collaborators at the national level, to kind of highlight, right, the opportunity, but also the need here when we talk about home ownership, just to illustrate the dimension of the problems we're dealing with, but also illustrate the opportunity that we have in terms of addressing this racial equity gap and rectify something that has been wrong for such a long time. So with that, I'm gonna pass it on to you, Sam, to walk us through that part of the webinar.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Pablo and Renee, and really, really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So my name is Sam Kenny. I'm a senior policy analyst with Unidos US. I focus primarily on housing and home ownership. So yeah, very grateful to Inclusiv and the network for inviting me to speak today with you all a little bit about Hispanic home ownership and sort of the state of the world there and a little bit of the work we are doing to support it. So with that, let's go to the next slide, please. So before diving into the numbers, I do want to provide just a brief overview of kind of who we are as Unidos, so you know who you're talking to. So Unidos is the largest Hispanic civil rights organization in the country. We have been around for about 50 years, and we have long supported the Latino community in many issue areas with on-the-ground programming, so kind of in local areas, but then also national advocacy. And Renee, I'm not sure, I can still see the first slide. Are we able to go to the next slide? And thank you, that's perfect. And just to highlight, these are the main issue areas of Unidos on the slide. And down in the bottom left, you'll notice housing and financial empowerment. So within this area, we have 4 primary programs. We are a HUD-approved intermediary housing counselor. We work with about 300 affiliate organizations, some of them on housing, not all of them on housing. And then we also have 50 housing counseling agencies we work closely with. So financial empowerment, access to credit, and homeownership is extremely important to us. And that's why we're extremely excited to have this conversation at the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. So next slide, please. So I want to kick off the state of Hispanic homeownership discussion with a bit of broader historical context. So as you can see on the slide here, there is and importantly has been a significant gap between Latino and white homeownership rates for decades. This has been entrenched and it is persistent. So there are many underlying factors here, and we'll talk about a couple in detail. But I think this graph is really valuable to understand the context. So it's tough to look at, right? It's tough to see that big of a gap. But also, I think it's good to note the potential, right? There's real possibility here to move up and to increase Latino homeownership. And that's one of the things we are focused on in terms of moving the needle. And then also a lot of the good work you all in this network is doing to improve access to credit. So next slide, please. So before diving more into the potential, I do want to start by considering a few of the clear headwinds faced by the Latino community. So we have a forthcoming national poll that will be published soon, and I would be happy to share that information with Renee and then kick out to the larger network as soon as we actually get that out publicly. But in our national poll, we really heard loud and clear from the Latino community that there was 3 main issues: lack of savings, high prices, and high interest rates. And so these probably do not come as a surprise to folks who are involved in the home ownership market, but I do want to break them down just a little bit more and kind of what we are hearing from the community. So we know that lack of savings are correlated with wealth and income, and that Latinos are overrepresented in low-wage jobs, and this leads to lower levels of savings and overall wealth. And then we also know that simultaneously throughout the pandemic, home prices have been rising like crazy. So from March 2021 to 2022, there was a 20% national increase in home prices, which in and of itself is an incredibly high number. But then you zoom in on the data a little bit with thinking about the Latino community in mind in cities like Tampa and Miami and Phoenix and a whole bunch of other Sunbelt cities, sometimes price increases are actually over 30%, so very significant. And then of course, mortgage rates. So I don't quote me on the numbers. You all probably know them better than I do, but I think, it was about 5.6 last week, but about 2.8 a year ago. So that's a pretty significant increase. With the rates of inflation numbers coming out this week and signaling from the Fed, it would not be surprising to see interest rates continue to climb, thus constricting potentially access to credit again for the Latino community, making it more expensive. So those are definitely real barriers. And then to add to it, another key takeaway from the survey is that nearly 50% of Latino households reported knowing only a little or nothing at all about applying for a mortgage. And so this is a really important point here that I want to draw out a little bit, is that these financial transactions, buying a home, accessing credit, these are complicated endeavors. And what we have heard in our survey recently and in the past is that additional housing counseling and support and information is needed. And this is really made painfully clear in a recent Pew survey that showed that nearly a third of Latino households use alternative financing in addition or as a substitute to a traditional mortgage. So there can be many reasons for this, and this doesn't mean that it's necessarily problematic, but what we have heard from conversations with our community members is understanding that certain markets within the Latino community, so folks who are self-employed, folks who have an ITIN, folks who have higher debt to income ratios, it is harder for them to access credit, and this oftentimes can push them towards suboptimal financing options. So this is, these are a few examples of some key headwinds. They don't, provide all of the details here, but I think give a general understanding of the real barriers facing Latinos when it comes to homeownership. So next slide, please. So to be candid, the issues we discussed on the previous slide, right, they're very real and they're significant challenges, and we're definitely eyes wide open to that, and that the Latino homeownership rate has been steady for decades. And I will say we are truly hopeful about the great potential that the Latino community represents for improving the homeownership rate and what that could look like. So a couple of data points to inform that. So first off, projections by the Urban Institute show that the Latino community will play an outsized role in homeownership over the next decade and 2 decades, projecting that approximately 7 out of 10 new homeowners will be Latino. It's a really important demographic fact. So whether it's a little bit higher or a little bit lower, the key is there, it's going to be a very important market. And then secondarily, not secondarily, but next, in another recent poll that Unidos conducted nationally, 90% of Latino non-homeowners were motivated to own a home. And I think this is really important as we think about sort of our homeownership goals at Unidos, and then you all engage in efforts that you are working on. There is a strong drive from within the community to have homeownership, to achieve that goal, and to move in that direction. And then third, there are many Latinos who are mortgage ready right now, according to a recent study by Freddie Mac. So we can share the study afterwards and we can look at the details, but I think bottom line, the important takeaway here is that we have heard, I think, an incorrect narrative at times that some in the Latino community are not mortgage ready. And while it's true that every interaction is individual basis and everyone's finances look different, the fact of the matter is there are a lot of Latinos right now who are mortgage ready that may look different than some other borrowers, but they have that will and the drive to become homeowners and potentially the underlying finances as well. And then lastly, I just want to point out that it's been done before. Laredo and El Paso sounds like a really exciting conference coming up in El Paso. they've either closed or dramatically closed the Latino homeownership gap. I think it's really important to keep in mind that there are proof points out there yes, there's real barriers, but with this real potential, and we have seen some cities really overcome those gaps. And so I think the questions that really come to mind for me after looking at these last slides, the headwinds and sort of the great potential as well, is kind of what do we do next? How can we push Hispanic homeownership further? And I know we're looking forward to the conversation today to dive into some of those details. And I'd just like to share a little bit of information about kind of what Unidos is involved in as well. So next slide, please. So to wrap us up here, we're looking at all this data, we're working with partners, and we have decided to make a commitment to transform the economic trajectory of Latinos through homeownership. And specifically, we've really made an institutional goal that over the next 10 years, we're going to work to build our program, our policy, our research, and our communication framework to really focus on the creation of millions of new Latino homeowners. So this is a big and ambitious goal. We are in a planning year right now in 2022. But I want to just share a little bit more about this, what this could look like, and then also how this relates to the conversation today. So one of the areas in particular that we'll be doing is investing in our affiliate base in our housing counseling network. And part of that is helping share the good work that financial institutions are doing to create products that are safe and sound for the Latino community. So I think there's opportunity for some collaboration there. Additionally, we will be working to elevate the salience of homeownership with policymakers at all levels. So we know that homeownership happens at local, state, and federal policy levels, that we need them all to work in tandem to be able to make real progress. And then, as you can see here on this little wheel, we sort of have 4 key policy buckets. And one of these is access to credit. So I could talk about all of them in depth, but I just want to highlight this one today, that this is really formed the basis for a lot of getting people ready to access homeownership. And we are interested in working with innovators, with community lenders and others to ultimately offer safe and sound projects to future homeowners. And I'll wrap it up here by just saying that as we're looking towards 2023, as we're looking to having more of a public launch of our next initiative, we know that success moving forward happens through partnership, and success moving forward happens through collaboration across both the financing of it, the policies of it, the programs of it. And so excited to have the conversation today, looking forward to any questions. And with that, Pablo, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Sam. This is terrific. Not surprising, but just confirming, many of the trends and data that we all manage, and many on this call also recognize. I just want to point out a couple of things here. Number one is, when you talk about those barriers, clearly the affordability issue is it's a big challenge, and it's something that we as financial institutions are going to be hard pressed to address. But I think that the interest rate, and we have a question already on the chat that we're going to answer once we go through this panel, but I think that affordability can be addressed a little bit with making sure that we are actually making financing more affordable as well. And that's related to the question that Cisco already posed on the chat. But I also want to highlight, this model imperative that we all have as financial institutions, that we need to address this. At the end of the day, stronger communities actually benefit those that serve those communities, and credit unions are by definition hyper-local in terms of how they lend and how they mobilize savings from local communities and invest back in those communities. And that's my talk, totally agreeing with my statement. So I think that there's, that model imperative, but also the business opportunity that you highlighted. So with that, I would like to open it up now to the panel that we have put together. We have this amazing group of experts. So I want to start with Ahmed, and Ahmed, maybe you can turn your camera on and just bring you in terms of, the work that you have been doing at Inclusiv, in terms of affordable housing product, helping our members, but also just looking at what's going on in the marketplace, can you synthesize, what are the biggest challenges that you see in the credit union land in terms of how we respond to this, mission, but also to this opportunity?
Well, I mean, Pablo and Renee, first, thank you for leading this important and courageous conversation, especially in recognition of Hispanic Heritage Month. I also want to give a special thank you to Sam for, painting that very, very clear and distinct picture, for our audience to level set. We're talking about lending to Hispanic, communities. Often we find ourselves talking about I-10 lending. And I don't want to assume that everyone understands when we use particular acronyms. I-10, for those who haven't been exposed to it, is an individual taxpayer identification number. It's issued by the Internal Revenue Service for the purposes of someone who is not a citizen or undocumented, actually to report their earnings to the government so they can pay taxes. So I just want you to kind of like pause right now just on that very thought. Someone is here. We have this concept that they're here with nefarious intents. We get media portrayals that they're coming, but here they are filing for a government IRS issued document in order to report their earnings. I just want to really kind of like make sure that we settle on that, because in my travels, I-10 lending or lending to Hispanic communities, it comes up in a variety of ways, Pablo. It's either where the credit union serves a largely Hispanic market, and they're looking for ways to expand its impact, through the lending side, or they're witnessing a shifting demographic, and they're seeing the threat of becoming obsolete, and because they don't have an I-10 program, they haven't considered this as not necessarily a crisis crunch, but an opportunity. This is where they can tap into that underserved market. In all cases, first and foremost, the greatest challenge or hurdle, to overcome is going to be fear of opening accounts and lending to undocumented immigrants, as well as the Hispanic community. I want to say there are no laws that exist that restrict mortgage loans being offered to non-citizens. Would you agree with me on that? I just need a nod. Somebody let me know if I'm on the right page here.
I mean, can we repeat that? Because I think that this is one of the barriers, one of the perceived barriers in many, financial institutions, not just credit unions, but there's this perception that there's a legal issue here, both in terms of I-10 lending, but also in terms of account opening, with I-10 documents. Yeah,
I'll repeat, there are no laws that exist that restrict mortgage loans or opening accounts being offered to non-citizens. On the mortgage side, it's just that most lending institutions, and perhaps, some that are in the audience today, you have a preference to only offer loans to borrowers with a Social Security number. Additionally, like neither Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or FHA back these types of loans. And I'm speaking not about just I-10 loans, but loans to undocumented immigrants. And that creates difficulties, pertaining to, accessing the secondary mortgage market. So there are only unique types of lenders, or namely what we call portfolio lenders, that offer these types of loans. So Pablo, to your point, once that has been addressed, there's still cultural barriers to acceptance that this demographic is a worthwhile population to serve. You know how I am. I'm gonna say it, gonna cut right to the chase. Generally speaking, this is often the part of the puzzle that is most challenging in terms of changing people's perceptions and prejudices that are rooted, in my opinion, in a lack of knowledge about the Hispanic culture and rich heritage and building vibrant communities and sustaining economies. There's a perceived risk that the loan is somehow more likely to default due to the documented status of the borrower or the borrowers. And while there's always risk associated with the extension of credit, there is no available data that I've been able to find that supports the contention that an I-10 mortgage or lending to someone who is of Hispanic heritage defaulting at a greater pace than a conventional mortgage to a Social Security holder. And to the contrary, many I-10 homes are occupied by vested owners and occupants, perhaps to a greater degree than conventional homes occupied by citizens, Social Security number holders. And I'll go back to checking the boxes. Checking the boxes clearly is not an easy task, but once you've covered it, a credit union can be on its way to making a significant difference in impacting home ownership. The next steps are by no means a cakewalk, Pablo. So I'm going to take you through. It involves establishing account opening procedures in accordance with BSA, Bank Secrecy Act, and fraud prevention measures. And these are important because the lending process relies heavily upon these steps to ensure, that the risk to the institution is mitigated, not avoided, but done in a responsible manner that doesn't open the credit union up to otherwise avoidable losses.
Yep. And we are not here to give you a deep dive in terms of underwriting. That's where I would invite everyone who's interested in learning more about this to reach out to Ahmed, also to our partner Paper Lending, because this is where the expertise can be shared with you guys. But thank you, Ahmed, for highlighting the opportunity and also, clarifying some of these perceptions that sometimes, get in the way actually of serving our communities.
Yeah, I do also want to point out, Pablo, there's something else again, because I like to, to keep it straight. Because these are not loans that, fall under like the GSEs where you can do automated underwriting, these loans require manual underwriting. So again, I want to warn, there's more time and greater resources are going to be required. We help credit unions to expand their credit box in that manner. So to Pablo's point, but I will say, be prepared to invest in staffing that not only understands the community, but embraces the community. Be prepared to invest in a cultural shift towards lending beyond the traditional means and methods that I think we've all become too comfortable with, and recognize this is a community product, and as such, it should reflect the values of the people that you serve.
And that's a great point, Ahmed. We don't believe on product based responses to community needs. It has to be a framework. I love what you mentioned about building your own capacity to communicate, to build trust in the community. And that's where Juntos Avanzamos as a framework is such an important tool for everyone to think about. So yes, products are important, but they need to be delivered in a context where that product really makes sense and people can really relate to it and really understand how to use it.
Absolutely.
So with that, thank you, Ahmed. I want to move on to Maria Gutierrez. Maria, you are representing a credit union that is iconic in so many ways. Onpath was a critical responder to Hurricane Katrina many, many years ago. You guys have been such an inspiration for many of us for many years. And over the last few years, you guys have been also focusing on the Hispanic community. So maybe, Maria, you can just tell us a little bit about that journey, why you started serving the Hispanic community, why this matters to you guys, and what you have learned in that journey.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this wonderful webinar. I have learned so much about it just listening to you guys, very inspirational. That motivates me to keep going. I started with the credit union about 6 months ago. The credit union has been in the community for years and years. And Paul called me one day and said, Maria, would you like to join the credit union? We want to increase and we want to develop and we want to be able to help the Hispanic community, especially with IT loans. Well, I was working at that time for a local bank, and of course, banks will not touch an IT loan. And I have been receiving several calls from my realtors and customers that wanted to get an IT loan. So I said, well, this is going to be an opportunity for the credit union, for the members and myself to be able to offer this type of loans, because we have a huge community in New Orleans that they have IT loans. So the credit union started offering the IT loans a few years ago, but the lady who was managing the program left. And when Paul came, they were asked Paul to see if they can bring the IT loans back. And that's when Paul reached out to me because they wanted not just to serve the community, the Hispanic community, but to increase and develop these programs. So I came over, of course, didn't know anything about IT loans. I've been in the business for 27 years, but I had never done IT loans. I've been doing a conventional FHA, Fannie Mae, but never IT. So, but Bob Monday was so helpful in, we had a meeting with him. We had a conference call with my underwriter, Paul, my assistant, and myself, and he went over the guidelines. Of course, it was overwhelming because, not knowing the program, we had a little, difficulties in understanding it. But we closed a few with his help, taking our hands and walking us through the program. So he was still very helpful with the programs and what to do and not to do. And I think by now I'm getting there. So I am hoping that we'll definitely continue offering this program because there's a lot of need in the community. Unfortunately, the Hispanic, and I can only talk about the Hispanic community. I don't know any other community about the Asians or the Middle Eastern community, but the Hispanic community, of course, if you are an IT loan, probably 95% are going to be 1099. So these are members that go to the CPAs, and of course, like nobody wants to pay nobody wants to pay the IRS, and so they don't understand the need to file enough income taxes so they can qualify. A lot of them don't think they need credit as long as they pay cash. So they still have the mentality, because in our countries, I'm from Nicaragua, in our country, we don't have any such a thing as credit report. So now we're starting getting credit cards, but when I was growing up, there was not such a thing as credit or getting a loan in the bank. You either had the money or they didn't have the money. Well, they came here with that mentality. So it's been a challenge to teach them, to tell them that it is very critical and important to open credit in this country, because most of the loans goes by credit scores. Fortunately, Inclusiv has alternative credit, which we have been done a couple with Bob, where we had to get alternative credit because they had no credit at all. And it's a challenge, but it's just a matter of educating them and telling them what to do and get ready for the future if they're not ready now. So it has been a great program. It's been very successful. Inclusiv has great rates compared to the competition. I heard that our rates are much better than the competition. In our LTVs, I mean, we can do up to 90% LTV. I think that is fabulous. So I'm hoping that we can continue grow this the program for the credit union, because they are very eager to grow this program even farther than we have done it so far. And of course, I hope Bob can still help us. Like I said, sometimes they're not easy, but like every loan, even FHA, even conventional, sometimes they're not easy. We just had to get a little bit creative.
Yeah, Maria, I really appreciate your point about education. I think that's where, any response that just focuses on delivering a product will not be fully successful. It has to be in a context of educating and preparing borrowers for this. You mentioned a couple of things that really resonated. There's a little bit of aversion to debt in many immigrant communities. I can speak for my dad, for instance. He never got a loan in his life. It was always about saving money first. And that kind of speaks to the first barrier that Sam talked about, and the importance of connecting immigrants and Latinos to the financial mainstream, to institutions that don't only want to take their money, but also make that investment back into their communities. So thank you for sharing that, Maria. Really appreciate it. I want to move on to David Olson from Pivot Lending. David, we are really, really happy with the partnership, with the support and the commitment that Pivot Lending has demonstrated to the Latino community. Your support of Juntos Avanzamos has been really important. We deeply appreciate it. So we want to just tap into your expertise now to helping us or help the audience here understand how they can provide the service. How can we meet this need in terms of making housing a reality for immigrants and Latinos? What have you seen through your network, and how do you help credit unions respond to this need? David?
I see David is muted. David, you are on mute.
We're going to do a ground control check on David. If not, while we wait for David, maybe Bob, you want to chime in here. What other lessons and learnings can you share with the group here?
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. It's a great conversation. I'd like to say, first of all, that I think when the industry in general approaches doing this kind of lending, that we need to give up the idea that it's really difficult. It's really different from regular lending, because it really isn't. The difficulty lies in how you qualify them. But you know, if you're working with low to moderate income people, there's a lot of challenges in getting those loans approved as well. So there's always going to be challenges, but the process really isn't any different doing ITIN lending versus lending with Social Security number borrowers. The
Bob,
challenge.
that point, can we just reiterate that point? Because I think that there's, again, talking about perceptions, that this perception that we're talking about a whole new product, and this is not a really new product, right? It's, you know, maybe the underwriting piece. So can you just speak more to that, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's a new product if you go, if that's the approach that you're taking. You know, there are a lot of credit unions out there that aren't differentiating between Social Security numbered programs and ITIN programs. Everybody has access to the same programs, the same rates. There's no differentiation. And then there are other lenders who are differentiating. And like I've seen in the chat, you know, rates that are 2% higher. And honestly, when I started at Inclusiv, our rates were 2% higher than the third year, the Social Security loan program start rate. And I did not know anything about ITIN lending when I came onto the Inclusiv team. So I learned as I went, and I learned very quickly that the delinquency rates are really, you know, they're fantastic. These loans really, more often than not, outperform regular loans. And so, you know, flags are going off in my head. Why are we charging more? Why are we charging higher rates? Why are we only, you know, lending to 80%? That now, the 80% challenge is because nobody's offering mortgage insurance in the industry to ITIN lenders. So eventually, after pushing and pushing, you know, we got the rates down to only 1% higher than the 30-year start rate for Social Security borrowers. And I'm continuing. I'm not going to give up until we have a level playing ground as well. But we were able to raise the LTVs to 90% without MI. We have loan minimums to cover ourselves, so we have enough equity in case there's a default. But again, the default rate is so minimal. It's a different culture. It's a family culture. You know, families will come into the office to get a mortgage. It's not just going to be one person. I spoke to one credit union. I think it was in Wisconsin, and the lending officer said she has the biggest office in the credit union because when she interviews an ITIN lender, the whole family comes in. It's a family affair. They're all participating together. It's a very different culture. And I think that's why the delinquency rates are so small.
Bob, thank you for that point. Maybe because you talked about interest rates, and we have a bunch of questions on the chat. I wonder if, Renee, if we should just move on to the chat and kind of, this is the moment to start kind of, answering these questions. So we have, I saw the one from Cisco.
Pablo,
Do you wanna read it?
I do see David
Oh,
unmuting.
David is
I
back.
think grant control to David.
David, are you with us?
Yeah, let's keep moving. There's a lot of activity on the chat, so I'm really eager to go through this.
You know, can I just say there was somebody did have a question about fake social security numbers coming up with ITIN lenders, and I tried to give as quick an answer as a response as I could. But that's most ITIN borrowers have a fake social security number. That's just the reality. You know, they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. They can't get a job without a social security number, but and they can't get a social security number because they're not a citizen. So they wind up buying a social security number to get their first job. And that's the end of that social security number. It does wind up showing up on their W-2s. But as I said in the chat, as long as the taxes are done to the ITIN number and you're running credit through the ITIN number, then it should not be a problem. But the lenders who are thinking about doing ITIN lending have to be comfortable with that. And the lenders that I've spoken to, what they do is they interview the borrowers and they ask them flat out, why do you have somebody else's social security number? And the way they gauge it is that if the borrower is honest and tells them exactly what I just told you, we bought the number to get our first job and we've never done anything else with it, then they're likely to give that person a loan. But it's the borrowers that lie about the number that raises some flags, so they might not lend to those people. But more often than not, they just say exactly what the situation was and proceed with giving them. So
just to clarify, we're talking about someone who opens an account with an ITIN number. The obligation and responsibility of the financial institution is to verify that person's identity. So the conflict here that you're talking about is when someone pulls a credit report using a social security number that was given during that account opening process, right? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, we're not doing a loan with somebody if you're pulling the credit with somebody else's social security number.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
okay.
You pull it with the ITIN number, and if they have no credit, then we do alt credit.
And there's, years ago, we developed an ITIN lending guide in partnership with Coopera, Filene, and PolicyWorks, which is now by Clarity. So there's guidance about what to do in those situations, and we can definitely circulate that guidance. Renee, should we?
So I think David is back.
I'm hoping. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Hey, David.
Oh my God, nothing gets the heart racing like bad technology. Oh my gosh. Guys, I appreciate you willing to push me along while I deal with the technology pieces. Want to thank Inclusiv and all the folks on the webinar for attending today. I'm actually in New Mexico as we speak, and that's where some of my technology issues are coming from. But in the spirit of the Hispanic Month, we just partnered, member close, with the Inclusiv program with the League of New Mexico to offer ITIN lending. So super excited about that. And wanted to just kind of go through some of my experiences on the ITIN, as well as some best practices and maybe resources that might help some of the folks on the phone. So one more time, just do a sound check. Do I sound good?
Yep, you do.
Awesome, fantastic. About a year and a half ago, we had a fairly large credit union out of California approach Pivot Lending in an effort to find a solution for $100 million worth of ITIN lending that they wanted on their books. They did not have the infrastructure to support that growth internally. technology, human resources, all the things that I'd heard earlier when Ahmed was talking. It takes some capital to do that in experience. So the challenge that this credit union presented to Pivot was, look, we have this large portfolio that we want to grow, and can you guys create an I-10 mortgage department where you take our member from soup to nuts and fund it, and then we buy the loan and you guys subservice it for us. So at 30,000 feet, Maria earlier was talking about, all the FHA and the conventional. This is my 30th year, good, better, and different in the industry. But we thought, okay, this, the technologies are there. We're direct Fannie seller servicer. That's not going to be a problem. But as we got into it, we learned a lot about the Hispanic culture. We learned a lot about the nuances that make it a little bit more challenging until you open up the communication gaps. So just kind of walking through some of the things that we've done over the last 2 years is we created a policy as well as underwriting guidelines for their particular I-10 loan. We on the underwriting guidelines, we mirrored those loans to pretty much match up with Inclusiv. So for NCUA, we created a marketable security for them so that they can say, hey, at any given time, we can actually sell these off of our books. We had to come up with a cash system so that the culture pays in cash. And through our subservicing, we came with the technology for their intranet, where a teller can take the cash payment, put it in their savings, and then they sweep it through the intranet into our service link, and it prints up a mortgage payment receipt for them. We also created a slimmed down Spanish 1003 that dumps right into our LOS system. In addition to that, we had to ramp up on our side. So we had to hire bilingual origination teams. We had to hire bilingual servicing teams to meet that demand. And then finally was the marketing side of it. How do you get community? This particular community, the city that this credit union is in, it probably close to 400, 500,000 people. And we went in and with our marketing team and with their marketing department, came up with a library of products, collateral that the credit union now has set up in all the different shops, as well as creating a continuing education credit for realtors under non-traditional credit, so that the credit union can host realtors at their branches, offer the CE credit, and speak to the I-10 through that continuing education. So we've done a lot of things over the last year and a half, and simultaneously partnering with Inclusiv. So it's just a perfect marriage for what we had been given the challenge. So at the moment, that is up and running. And so for anybody that's on that's listening on this meeting, feel free to reach out to me on those experience pieces. I'd be more than happy to give you our playbook. And so that if you want to, instead of sending it out to somebody to originate it, you want to do it yourselves, we can help you with the policy. We can help you with marketing pieces. We can help you with that 1003. That's useful. But so that is that's kind of the experience side. Best practices. When I was spending time over in New England this past fall for the Cooperative Credit Union Association's fall conference, one of the larger credit unions in New England, they originate about 700 million in I-10 loans each year, first mortgages. So the CEO was speaking at a breakout session, and he said something very subtle at the end of the session. And he said that they have a team at the credit union that can issue I-10 numbers. So so think about that for a second. So I cornered him immediately, like he wasn't even off the stage yet, right? So I'm like, hey, I got to talk to you quick. So I said, how does that happen? And he's like, look, you can go to the IRS and get certified to issue I-10 numbers. There's an application. There's a process. It takes about 6 months to get approved. And so I immediately dug in, and our CFO is actually a CPA. And so there is some tax prepare pieces that you have to identify in there. But at the end of the day, if you're going to issue or originate and help the community on I-10 loans, what a great start for your member, you know. And the program takes we require 2 years of filing I-10 under the Inclusiv program for your tax returns, but you're getting them started. You've got a member for life, right? So best practices, and again, feel free to reach out, and I can kind of show you where we pulled that.
Yeah. David, that's
yeah.
fantastic. Thanks for that tip. We have a number of credit unions on this call that have done that actually provide that service. But it's a great reminder because, if we're talking about building borrowers, that's the way that we should be doing it. So thank you for offering that piece of advice. And also thanks again for the partnership and support.
You bet.
Renee, we have 4 minutes of the webinar. So should we, I know that people have been chatting back and forth. Are there questions that are still unanswered?
Well, I think looking at this chat, there's been a parallel conversation going on in the chat between the credit unions that are doing I-10, those that are interested in doing I-10. And indeed, Marna, we will definitely share the chat along with the PowerPoint. Aida also asked us that question. The chat is fascinating. I don't see really any questions that haven't been answered directly. If anybody has yeah, that's right, Chad. The chat is amazing. Does anybody have any question that they feel that hasn't been answered in the chat? Just drop it in straight to the chat right now, and we can toss it over to our panelists. Any questions? The same at the Q&A. Paulo, many of the questions have been around the issuance of I-10 numbers, social
I just
security
want to go back
numbers.
to the question about pricing and interest rates, because I think that credit unions are in the business of promoting financial inclusion. This is what we do. This is who we are. And I think that the only way to explain a slight difference between your I-10 loan products and your regular products is just the lack of a secondary market, which actually we at Inclusiv are trying to build. But other than that, again, I'm taking, some of the comments that Bob talked about. We're talking about financial inclusion. These are products that have been around. There's a track record. So I just want to reiterate that let's not think about this as a way to charge people who don't have options. Is the other way around. And I know that most of people on this call really share the same values and the same vision. So, but if we have to justify to our, examiners or auditors, I think that we can do better, and we should do better actually in terms of pricing. So with that, maybe I can just give it back to you, Renee, wrap us up. But thanks again to everyone for being part of this conversation and for this amazing chat. There's a lot going on there, so we really appreciate that interaction.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon for this webinar around home ownership. Really appreciate the participation of our partners, Unidos US, Inclusiv Mortgage, Pivot Lending, and of course, Onpath Credit Union for talking about their particular experience with their I-10 loan program. Thank all of you for joining us today. And of course, please stay tuned for the other activities and events that we will be celebrating as part of Hispanic Heritage Month. And please be assured we will share the copy of the chat, the PowerPoint, and the recording of this webinar with everyone after the webinar is over in the next couple of days. If you are doing I-10 lending and I-10 mortgage lending, I do encourage you to please, I will reach out, but please, you can reach out to me at rvargasmartinez@inclusiv.org and consider submitting your application for Juntos Avanzamos designation. I-10 is a part of the designation process, but it's a very important part of the designation process. So I'll go ahead and I'll put that information in the chat. And if you're interested in joining our network and being integrated into conversations such as this in a more regular manner, please feel free to write directly and we can work on it. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon. Panelists, please don't go away. We are going to be taking a picture. But for everyone, have a great afternoon and happy Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Monica, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, let's include you in the picture, Monica. Ahmed.
Oh,
And we have a great picture of David, there you are. Okay, excellent. We already had a great stock photo we were going to use.
Oh, no, yeah, hey, I'll go back to that stock photo. Hang on.
Well, we can use that as well.
Hey,
Right.
David, I thought that you were calling from the pool or something. That's why you didn't want us to see you.
Oh my God, no. So you guys have been to New Mexico, right? This is like my second time here ever. There's no cell phone reception or anything.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Where you are?
I was just panicking, and I'm trying to talk. So oh my God, it was awful, but I think it turned out okay. That was a really, really nice event.
It was, and again, I was like kind of changing between the chat and the panel. I was like, it was great. Like we had some homegrown panelists just straight from the audience, which is great. All right, so give me just 1 second to do this. I do it the old snip way, so I'll take a bit more. All right, so, okay, just a moment. 3, 2, 1, smiles. All right, and just one more for the record. David, your picture there, I mean, you need to cover your smile there. It's a bit off. Let me try that again with you.
Hey, Sam, a quick note to you. I would love to just touch base on the advocacy piece, that one, the last slide that you showed. We are also working on our 2023 advocacy, and there's some overlap that we would love to work with you on.
Right,
Oh, that'd be perfect. Yeah, we'd love to set that up. And it goes for everyone here. I learned a lot today, and so we'd love to connect with anybody who thinks we might be able to overlap in the future.
Excellent. All
Yeah,
right, so
I did too.
let me take the
Thank you so
picture
much,
again.
guys.
And just one more with David now. The real David. There we go. 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, thank you so much. And you all have a great day. Thank you for
Bye,
joining.
guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Pablo, really quick.
Yes.
Are you still there? I talked
Yes.
to Brian, and we're very interested in having that conversation next week.
Excellent. So I brought it up. So we'll connect offline. Okay.
Good. Take care.
All right. You too. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Luego.
Nos vemos. No sé por qué no puedo cortar esto.
Yo te corto, no te preocupes.
Okay.
Adiós.